Well, Maria, here we are. You've asked me to explain about my army mass kit. So there it is, and I'll explain a little bit about this particular one later on. But just to give you a little bit of background, you will have seen newsreel photographs of chaplains in the Second World War, for example. They did in the First World War as well. And what they had was a huge box, a big green metal box, about that big, like the size of a small trunk, very heavy, with a kind of inside you could lift out a big tray, and it had everything in there. I think in the Catholic one it also had the altar stone, and that was fine, I suppose, because certainly in the Second World War, when it was more mobile than trench warfare in the First World War, the priest would have transport, and he would have a dedicated driver or a batman, and so they would go and they would say mass for the troops on the tailboard of the Land Rover or the Jeep or the lorry, whatever it was, which was fine because, of course, in those days it was Tridentine Mass, the Latin Mass, and so the priest had his back to the people, so he could, the tailboard would be like an altar and would make a difference. Of course, in modern times, with the Mass facing the people, that would have been quite a tricky thing to do. When I joined the army, in just the late 70s, early 80s, we were issued with a small brown suitcase, rather almost like you'd see a schoolboy taking to school. And again, it had little compartments in with smaller things. And that's the one that I actually took to the Falklands with me. But it wasn't very practical. I couldn't hook it onto my webbing or, all the kit that I carried as well. And I remember one particular thing when I was tabbing with two para from Goose Green to Fitzroy Bay, where we were going to set up the field hospital. It was terrible weather and the wind was blowing like a hurricane, and so I had all this pack on my back and then carrying this suitcase, and because the wind got hold of it and bashed it against me and all over the place and upset my balance as we were going over this really rough terrain, marshy terrain and rocks and things like that. So it wasn't really an ideal bit of kit at all. When I got back from the Falklands, I shared that experience with the chaplains department, and I personally actually designed my own mass kit. I got some DPM, some camouflage clothing, which would fit in with our camouflage, and I designed it in such a way that it was like a big belt, and you could put the chalice in here and the crucifix in here and things like that, and then it all tied up, and I could actually put it inside my Bergen and carry it with me then. And one of the girls in the parish who worked for the military tailors, she actually sewed it all together. And I used that for a few years on exercise in particular, and it worked out okay. It was a bit messy, I suppose, but at least it was practical and okay. And then in the 1988 to 90, I was the staff chaplain at the MOD, which was the headquarters of the Royal Army Chaplains Department. And we were looking at a new mass kit, and we had various samples sent to us from various companies, and unbelievably, as far as I was concerned, the hierarchy went for a black case which you would see in catalogues from ecclesiastical suppliers, which is absolutely brilliant for house masses, because you take it out the back of your car, you bring it in, you set it up, and it's great, but totally and utterly useless for the field because it was made of cardboard. The black box, it was just like cardboard on the inside, so as soon as it got wet, that was the end of that. While I was there, and the reason the MOD bought that was because, as I say, I personally much preferred the American one, which is this. I'll show you in a minute. But it was too expensive, so they went for this other thing, which honestly was not very good at all. So eventually, I decided that I much preferred the American one, and I was sure, that the manufacturers wouldn't really want us to send the sample back. So here it is. I've had it all those years. I kept it, and I've used it for all over the world since. I used it especially in Northern Ireland, on tours of Northern Ireland, where I would often say mass maybe for 1, 2, 3 people in isolated places on the border, or in Belfast there were areas, because in Belfast it was busy all the time, and very often the guys didn't have a chance to come to Mass anyway. So sometimes and the thing was, I would set up wherever I could. So for example, when I went to the Falklands with that Mass kit I had, I said Mass I went down on the QE2, which was a troop ship at the time, and I said Mass wherever I could get room, including a cocktail bar, on a stewardess's trolley in their kitchen, in the staff's kitchen, in the laundry room at the very bottom of the ship. I did also have the use of the theatre on a Sunday for the big Mass on a Sunday, but all the other days just anywhere where I could find an ounce of space. And that's of course the beauty of this, because you can set it up anywhere. There was one stage where I actually said Mass on top of an oil drum after the Battle of Goose Green, when I said Mass for 2 para, and that was just on an oil drum which we found, turned up and made that an altar, only about that big, but that became the altar. So we improvised all the time. But this particular one, I say, it's been all over the world with me since. All the tours I did, everywhere I went really. It's been on exercise with me, it's also been on operations, so it's pretty good. And I'll show you why it's so good really. First thing is that it's the right colour, it's easy to carry. I can clip it onto, I can put it on top of I've got my Bergen on my back, it will sit on top of the Bergen. It's quite heavy, but it's really well thought out. So what I'm going to do now is because as you know, the reason Maria asked me to do this was because I'm saying Mass in the house because of the COVID-19 restrictions, that we can't say Mass in the public. So I have another table here, and I have it laid out as an altar every morning, and I say Mass for you all while we can't be together. So what I'll do now is I'll undo. As you can see, it's got a Velcro on as well, which is very secure. That keeps it dry. There's a little list of all the things that typical army, you know, they give you absolutely everything that goes in and should do. I've adapted it, of course, as you do. First thing that comes out is my stole, my army stole. We don't call it stole actually, it's called a regimental scarf, and that was and because I wouldn't use vestments, I would just put this over my uniform. Okay, so that would be used, and that would be used for all masses, whatever the liturgical time of the year. Obviously we need some altar linen, so we'll put the altar linen here. First of all, the corporal. Shall I put it? I'll tell you what, I won't put it on this table that I normally say Mass on, because it's too difficult for our intrepid photographer to follow me around this enclosed space. So we'll make an altar here, okay, that's what we'll do. So there's the corporal. This is the missal that I need, and this is rather ingenious little book stand with a chain. Any ideas what the chain's for? Windy conditions. So in fact I use this in the cemetery when I say the cemetery Mass every year, and then you just put that over like that, and it stops the pages from blowing open. And then that's improvised piece of what's that, foam, yeah, and that keeps safe all this. Can you see that? Have you got that, Maria? Okay, so first thing to come out is the crucifix, then the candles, and they've got tops on, again wide tops to stop the winds blowing the candles out. Then we have the chalice and the pattern that goes with that. Then we have the box that holds the altar breads, the hosts, so we'll put one on there for for show at the moment. Then of course we also need wine and water, which is there. A lighter to light the candles, you don't need to see that. That can go there. We need a purificator, and voila, that's it. What else do I need? Oh yes, I need a lectionary. I've not brought the lectionary with the readings in, but that's the only thing missing. Okay, and that's it. That's my mass kit. You'll see it when I lay it out in the house, of course. It's much. But you can see how compact it is. I could get that all onto all those things I mentioned before: a tea tray, a trolley, an upturned oil drum, all sorts of things like that. I also, and I can't remember where I got this from. I'm sure somebody gave it to me. But this is a little one, a little version of that I can take on holiday. That's the strap that holds it together. There's a stole, reversible. Here's a little picks for holding the hosts. Okay. I can't remember which army I got this from now. I don't think it wasn't ours anyway. There's the pattern. So I took this one away with me last year when I went skiing. So I was able to say mass there. This is the chalice. Okay, well actually that's the chalice, but it screws on like this. And of course we have a crucifix. I can't find the bottom for it. And an army style corporal. Okay, that was gone. Yeah, I seem to have mislaid the bottom of it, put it somewhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter because I would lay that down when I was saying mass anyway. So if we did that, we'd have the crucifix there. We'd have the pattern and chalice. Wait a minute, let's put this down. Can't steal these because they've got army colour khaki. Oh, that's for the lavabo. This is the actual corporal, I think. Yeah, this is the corporal. So there's the corporal. There's the purificator. There's the lavabo cloth, washing the hands. There's the chalice. What have I done with the crucifix? Here we are. Here's the crucifix. Here's the pattern. And this little thing here, this is for anointing. So giving people the last rites and things. We have the oil of the sick in there to anoint those who are sick or dying. And then a little thing to hold the holy water for the Mass. Voila! And so this is how I lay my Mass kit out for daily Mass here in the presbytery during the time of the COVID-19. And every day I remember you at Mass, all of you, as we promised at the beginning of this that we pray for each other. Well, you're included in every Mass that I say here. Until such time as we can celebrate together in the church. So God bless everybody.